Previously on Flames and Frost. In the Ashfrost Highlands, far from the lands of the ancient exile, Emberly and Zephyr lived in peace. These Ashfrost dragons, part of the community founded by Asher and Frost over a century ago, had built a life of love and hope. Their greatest joy was their nest, which held 3 precious eggs, each one unique and perfect. The largest egg pulsed with fierce warrior energy. The pale marbled egg radiated quiet wisdom. And the third, constantly shifting between fire and frost, held a power unlike anything Elder Cinder had ever sensed. It was perfect balance, reminiscent of his own birth, a gift he shared with his parents, the founders themselves. But perfection is fragile. As Emberly and Zephyr prepared to welcome their hatchlings, the weather turned strange. Dark clouds gathered with unnatural speed. Rain became deluge. The peaceful valley transformed into a raging torrent. And then, the mountain itself began to give way. The landslide struck without mercy, tearing apart the cliff where they had built their home. As the ledge crumbled beneath them, Emberly and Zephyr fell, their eggs tumbling into the chaos. The last sound was Emberly's desperate scream. Episode 7. The Nest. Time slowed as they plummeted through the storm-torn air. Rain lashed their faces, wind tore at their wings. Debris from the collapsing cliff tumbled around them like a deadly barrage of stone and earth. But none of that mattered to Emberly. Her entire focus had narrowed to 3 objects falling just ahead of her. The eggs. They tumbled through the air, separated by the violence of the fall. The pale marbled egg spiraled to her left. The large crimson egg cartwheeled to her right. And the colour-shifting egg fell between them, its surface flashing desperately between fire and frost.
Zephyr! The eggs!
I see them. Tuck your wings and dive.
Together, they folded their wings and dove, streamlining their bodies to fall faster than the eggs. The wind screamed past them, the ground rushing up at terrifying speed. But Emberly's mind was clear. The razor-sharp clarity that comes from absolute necessity. She would reach her children. There was no other option. Zephyr angled toward the crimson egg, his larger frame cutting through the air like a spear. Emberly aimed for the pale, marbled egg to her left, the closest one. The colour-shifting egg tumbled alongside the crimson one, both falling toward the east. Then, the wind shifted. A violent gust caught the crimson and colour-shifting eggs, spinning them further away from Zephyr's grasp.
No! They're separating!
I can't reach them. The wind is too strong.
Emberly watched in horror as the crimson egg and the colour-shifting egg were caught by the same gust, tumbling together into the rain-soaked darkness to the east. But the pale marbled egg was still ahead of her, still within reach. She stretched her foreclaws forward, desperately reaching. Closer. Her talons grazed its surface, cool and smooth, alive with the gentle life force within. She extended herself to the breaking point, every muscle screaming. Her claws closed around it.
I got one!
She looked for Zephyr. He was still diving, still reaching for the 2 eggs that tumbled together beyond his grasp. His roar of anguish cut through the storm.
I can't reach them!
2 eggs falling into the unknown. The realization was a knife through her heart. There was no time. The ground was seconds away. Both dragons spread their wings simultaneously, fighting to slow their descent. The sudden resistance nearly tore the wings from their backs. Emberly screamed, but held on, clutching the egg to her chest, refusing to let go even as her body protested the violent deceleration. They hit the water hard. The valley floor had transformed into a raging flood. What had been a peaceful stream was now a violent river, swollen by the storm and the overflowing thermal springs. The impact drove the breath from Emberly's lungs, and the current immediately seized her, tumbling her like a leaf.
Zephyr!
She couldn't see him, couldn't see anything but churning brown water and debris. She curled her body around the egg, protecting it with everything she had. The current slammed her into a boulder, something cracked. Her rib, maybe. It didn't matter. The egg was safe. Something grabbed her tail. She thrashed, thinking it was debris, but then recognized Zephyr's desperate grip. He had found her in the chaos. His arms were empty.
Hold on! Grab hold!
Emberly hooked her tail around his, their bodies linking even as the current tried to tear them apart. Together they fought toward the shore. Every stroke was agony, every breath a battle. After what felt like an eternity, Zephyr's claws found purchase on solid ground. He hauled them both onto a rocky outcropping, a small island of safety in the midst of devastation. They collapsed together, gasping, battered, but alive. And Emberly still held one egg. For a long moment, neither could speak. They lay there, sides heaving, bodies tangled together. The storm continued to rage, but the worst of the landslide had passed.
One. I could only save one.
Zephyr lifted his head, eyes full of shared anguish.
I couldn't reach them. The wind took them both.
His expression crumbled, the strong protector breaking under the weight of failure.
I was so close, Em. I had them in my sights, and then...
I know. It's not your fault.
Emberly forced herself to examine the egg she held. The pale marbled shell was intact, its silver-white surface streaked with coral orange, still pulsing with that gentle, steady energy. She sent out a tentative tendril of her senses. The hatchling within stirred, responding to her presence. Shaken, but unharmed.
This one survived.
The others might have survived as well. The shells are strong, stronger than regular eggs. There's still a chance if they landed in water.
Then the current would be carrying them downstream, away from us.
They both stared at the raging flood. Somewhere in that churning water were their other two children.
As soon as the storm passes, we search every inch of this valley.
But this one needs us now. Warmth, shelter. If we leave to search...
The impossible choice hung between them. Search for the lost eggs and risk the one they held, or protect the one they had and potentially lose the other two forever. Zephyr made the decision with the heavy certainty of a father accepting his burden.
We protect this one first. Find shelter, make sure it's safe. Then we tear this valley apart.
What if it's too late by then?
Then we've already lost them. But if we abandon this egg to chase the others, we might lose all three.
Emberly wanted to argue, wanted to scream that they couldn't abandon two children to save one. But the weight of the egg in her arms anchored her to reality. He was right. Horrible as it was.
Then we move. Now.
They found shelter in a cave halfway up the valley wall, high enough to be safe from the flood, deep enough to offer protection from the storm. Zephyr used his frost breath to seal the entrance partially, while Emberly breathed gentle flames, warming the stone floor. Together they created a makeshift nest from moss and their own shed scales. Emberly heated several large stones with her fire breath until they glowed with warmth, then arrange them in a circle around the egg. The stones would hold their heat for hours, long enough. A call echoed from outside, and then another, different in tone. Emberly recognized both. The resonant cry of an Ashfrost, answered by the sharper call of a fire dragon.
Here! We're over here!
Within moments, 3 dragons appeared at the cave entrance, battered and mud-streaked, but alive. 2 were Ashfrost. Emberly recognized them from the gatherings at the central ridge. The third was a fire dragon, her crimson scales dulled by mud, but her eyes bright with concern. The fire and ice dragons who had been exiled alongside Asher and Frost over a century ago had never left. They had built this community together, 3 peoples united by shared history.
The others. How many made it?
One of the Ashfrost dragons shook his head, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Most had survived, he reported. The warning had come just in time for many to take flight. But the valley was devastated. Nests destroyed, supplies scattered. Several dragons, Ashfrost, fire and ice alike, were still unaccounted for.
2 of our eggs fell into the water. Have you seen them?
The fire dragon stepped forward, her expression pained. She'd been searching the eastern bank, she said. No eggs, but she would keep looking. Her own clutch had hatched last season. She understood what Emberly was feeling.
We'll find them. The whole community will help.
The Ashfrost dragon nodded firmly. Word would spread. Every dragon who could fly, Ashfrost, fire and ice, would join the search at first light. They were a community. They would face this together, as they had faced everything since the exile. As the 3 dragons departed to continue checking on survivors, Emberly felt a small spark of hope amid the despair. They weren't alone in this. Hours passed. The storm slowly began to diminish. Emberly and Zephyr took turns keeping watch, one always awake while the other rested. Neither could truly sleep.
We never named them.
Yeah, we did say we'd wait until they hatched.
I had such dreams for them. Teaching them to fly together, watching them discover their powers, seeing them grow.
Zephyr moved closer, his warmth pressing against her side.
Those dreams aren't gone. We still have 1 child who will need all of that.
But it should have been 3.
I know.
Emberly placed her snout against the pale marbled egg, feeling it respond to her presence with that same steady, calm energy.
We're going to find your siblings. I promise you.
The egg pulsed gently, a soft warmth against her scales. Whether acknowledgement or hope, Emberly couldn't say. As dawn approached, pale grey light filtered into the cave. Emberly moved to the entrance, looking out over the transformed landscape. The valley she had known was gone. In its place, a wasteland of mud, debris, and standing water. Trees uprooted, boulders displaced. Their cliffside home was simply gone, collapsed into rubble. But she wasn't alone in surveying the damage. Across the valley, dragons were emerging from their shelters. Ashfrost dragons with their distinctive dual-coloured scales. Fire dragons, their reds and oranges vivid even against the grey morning. Ice dragons, pale blue and white, already using their frost breath to stabilize unstable slopes. Some limped, some carried injured companions. All wore the same expression of shock and determination. This was the legacy of the exile, 3 peoples who had learned to live as one. The Ashfrost may have been the majority, but the fire and ice dragons who had chosen to stay with Asher and Frost were family, in every way that mattered.
Look, the community is already coming together.
Zephyr joined her at the cave entrance. Below, a group of dragons had already gathered near the new river channel, the one carved by the flood overnight. Ashfrost, Fire and Ice worked side by side, organizing into search parties.
Everyone's already searching.
For everyone's lost things. Not just ours.
It was true. The flood had taken more than just their eggs. Other families had lost nests, supplies, heirlooms passed down through generations. The entire community was in mourning, and yet they had come together to help each other. And then, Emberly saw them. Two figures moved through the crowd below, one with scales that flickered like dying embers, deep red fading to orange with age. The other shimmered pale blue and white, frost crystals forming naturally along her spine, despite the morning warmth. They moved slowly, carefully, but with unmistakable purpose.
Asha, Frost.
The founders themselves had come. Elder Cinder walked beside his parents, supporting his mother when the terrain grew rough. Asha's fire had dimmed with age, but her eyes still burned with fierce determination. Frost moved with the careful grace of an ancient glacier, slow but unstoppable. Asha's voice carried across the valley, strong despite her years, commanding despite her age.
Every wing that can fly, every eye that can search. We will find them.
Frost's voice followed, quieter but no less powerful.
The river flows south. We search in teams. Fire dragons, your heat will keep the eggs warm if we find them. Ice dragons, your cold will preserve them if they've been damaged. Ashfrost, you do both. Move!
Dragons launched into the air, organized by the founders' commands. Over a century of leadership had taught Asha and Frost how to mobilize their people. This was not their first crisis. It would not be their last. Cinder looked up toward Emberly and Zephyr's cave, his expression a mixture of grief and resolve. He raised a wing in acknowledgement, then turned to join a search party heading downstream.
They came. Despite their age, despite everything.
They came to help our children.
Below, Asha paused in her organizing. She looked up at the cave where Emberly stood, and even from this distance, Emberly could feel the weight of that gaze. A century of survival. A century of building something from nothing. A century of proving that love was stronger than fear. Asha raised her wing, not in greeting, but in promise. We will find them. Emberly raised her own wing in response. Then she turned to Zephyr.
The stones are still warm. The egg will be safe for a few hours.
Okay, so we'll search for a couple of hours, then return. We won't leave it alone for long.
Emberly hesitated at the cave entrance, looking back at the pale marbled egg nestled among the heated stones. Every instinct screamed at her not to leave it, but somewhere out there, two of her children were lost, and the founders of their entire people had come to help find them. She had to try.
We'll be back soon. I promise.
As they emerged from the cave, other dragons acknowledged them with nods of solidarity. Word had spread about the lost eggs. A pair of ice dragons changed course to fall in beside them, their frost abilities useful for preserving any eggs they might find. A fire dragon joined from the other direction, the same one who had visited their cave the night before. The flood had carved a new channel through the valley, creating a river where none had existed before. It flowed south, away from the Ashfrost highlands, away from everything they knew. On its surface, debris still tumbled downstream.
If the eggs landed in the current,
They could be miles away by now.
The enormity of the task was staggering. They weren't just searching a valley, they were potentially chasing a river that stretched to the horizon and beyond. But they weren't doing it alone. A young fire dragon landed beside them, breathless from scouting, his scales still smoking slightly from the speed of his flight. He had flown downstream, he reported. The river eventually calmed about 2 miles south, spreading into a wide delta before continuing on. If the eggs had survived the rapids, they might have washed up there.
That's where we start.
all right, let's go.
They took to the air, a mixed group of volunteers following behind, Ashfrost, fire, and ice, united in purpose. The sun broke through the departing storm clouds, illuminating the devastated valley in harsh detail. Behind them, Asher and Frost coordinated the search from the ground, too old now for extended flight, but no less vital to the effort. Their voices carried on the wind, encouragement, direction, hope. Somewhere out there, 2 of their great-great-grandchildren drifted through unknown waters. But their family would not give up. They would search every river, every valley, if necessary. The search had begun. And miles downstream, unseen and unknown, 2 eggs tumbled through the current. The large crimson egg and the colour-shifting egg drifted side by side, caught in the same powerful current, bound together by circumstance. The shells were strong. The hatchlings within were resilient. They had survived the fall, survived the flood. As the current carried them away from everything they should have known, away from their parents' desperate search, away from their great-great-grandparents' commands, they continued their journey toward an unexpected future. 2 eggs, 2 lives, 2 destinies forever altered by a single catastrophic night. Behind them, their families searched with breaking hearts. Ahead of them, strangers waited who would change everything. The separation was complete, and one of these eggs carried a destiny that would reshape the realm. What happens when hope turns to ash? When the search for the missing turns up nothing? When the Ashfrost community must face the possibility that some of their own may never return? Find out next time on Flames and Frost.